This project is intended to be somewhat of an introduction to CorelDRAW version X6 and newer, newest ability to work with open type fonts. I know we've been able to work with open type for quite some time, but not use the full power of what open type fonts bring to the table. This is an incredible asset, in my opinion, to CorelDRAW users, and enough of a feature to justify, as far as I'm concerned, upgrading from other versions. Let's see what you think. We're going to work with 4 open type fonts in this tutorial. First one is American Captain. That's included with CorelDRAW version X6. Zapfino Extra Pro, included also with X6. Lobster version 1.4, you can download it from the internet. And lastly, Gabriola, which is a open type font included in newer versions of Windows. Let's get started. For the purposes of this project, let me say that open type fonts give us some alternative characters and effects that would have taken a lot of effort using TrueType fonts. Yes, TrueType fonts we can convert to curves and do anything we want to it. But number one, it's a lot of work. And number two, it's no longer editable text. Open type fonts have built into them alternative characters and alternative effects that we can change our mind later on, go back and modify, look at several different options, and still have editable text. So now finally, let me give you an example. I'm going to go to my pick tool, select this upper block of text. I think I'll go to my zoom tool and zoom up a little better so we can get a good look at that. And then I'll go back to my pick tool and let's sweep across this line of text, which is the font name. Notice, here's the heart of how we work with open type fonts. Notice this little triangle. We call that in CorelDRAW a More button because there's more options here. You'll see several of those in CorelDRAW X6. For instance, the greatly improved power clip, which I've illustrated on a different tutorial, has that very handy More button that allows us to do several of the things much more intuitively than we'd been able to do it before. But now let me show you some of the options for this. If I click on this, I see 4 different options. Here's my original. That's what I have right now. I'm going to go to Stylish Set 1, and do you see what changes? I'm going to flip back and forth between there. Notice the M and the N's have a chiseled, a harder look. Going back to the other. If you're looking for the easiest to read, this would probably be it. A little more sophisticated look here if we're looking for power or hardness. Let's go to Stylistic Set 2. What changed there? Again, we have the different A. Let me go back here. Here's our original. We'll drop down here. Notice the different lowercase a. Here we go back to the other A. Before we go any further, let me give you a couple of the gotchas. First, we can have a maximum of 1 line selected. If we have more than 1 line selected, we do not have the little More button. That's one gotcha. But then let me show you another problem here. Notice the More button as it goes across here. There will be certain scenarios like this one that there's no More button. Yes, really there is, but it's hidden under the P. But we're talking about some of the gotchas. Another gotcha is if this button up here is unchecked, that is, if it's not highlighted. Now notice we don't have the More button, so the open type feature must be turned on for this to work. There is one other way that we can access the Open Type properties. I'm going to right-click on a text box and tell it I'd like to see the object properties, which brings up the Object Properties Docker, an incredible new tool. Actually, there's not that much new here except the Open Type capability. But finally, CorelDRAW has put it all back in one Docker, so absolutely everything we could want to change about text is all in this one part. But whether or not this is checked, if we have one line selected here, then notice we can come in and apply these different looks here. Then we'll go to our pick tool and select it. And here we see a pretty fancy font right out of the box. But because it's an Open Type font, we have more capability there. I'm going to double click on it. That'll put me into the text tool. I'm going to triple click on it. That'll select the whole object. And notice my More button here showing me the different options we'll have for this particular font. So I'm going to pull that down. Notice we have a bunch of them. Here's what I have now. I'll move down here and see if I can see the difference. This is standard ligatures. This is another issue that I want to call to your attention. We haven't talked about ligatures before. Let's set that. And now let me show you what that has done. I'm going to go to my Shape tool, and notice now a ligature, by definition, is two or more characters that have been turned into one. So in this example, notice that's just one character. That we call a ligature. My favorite example of an Open Type font and what it can do, especially for the engraver, is Gabriola. But hold on, right before we get to that, we'll go to my second most favorite, and that would be Lobster. This is one that is a free font that you can download from the internet. I'm going to triple click the top line, and notice I have my More button. I'll pull the More button down and see in this case we only have one option, and that's standard ligatures. But oh my, let me show you what that one option does for us. So as I'm flipping back and forth here, see if you can notice what it's doing. First, notice the S, how it changes as we go to standard ligatures. We'll jump over. Next, notice the Y and the P. We'll come back to that in a second, but notice how much cleaner it is under the standard ligature option. Notice the E, the tail is chopped off because it's at the end of a word. As we walk across, notice the Y in Roy is not at the end of a word. There's not a space in there, but still the ligature realizes that that tail should not be there with all of that void space. It thinks it would look much better without that tail. I just explained ligatures. This is a ligature that we've never seen before, and that's a Y and P. It has turned the Y and the P into a standard ligature that's just one letter now. Okay, let's jump down to the second line to show you something a little different here in this terrific font. Here we have our More button almost hidden. I'm going to pull it down. And I have standard ligatures, but also I have fraction option. Notice it recognizes that that would look a lot better as a fraction. So let's put some on our standard ligatures. Notice the E here. If we apply this and then come back and apply our standard ligatures Now we have the best of both worlds. We have the fraction and we have the truncated tail. So that's Lobster. Some terrific different options and ligatures in that font. But now for my favorite, let's jump to the next page where I have Gabriola. And let's do this. Let's take this letter and put some new text in. Let's put something like Monarch Trophy. And I'm going to triple click on that and see what my options are. What do you think? Pretty slick, huh? Here, notice we have upper lowercase, truly designed upper lowercase. Here we have a completely little softer look, but it looks like 6, 8, 10 completely different options. In addition, we don't have to use the whole part. Let's do that again. I'm going to triple click on that. And I think I'd like to take just Monarch Trophy right there at the beginning. And then let's duplicate that. I'm going to select that, duplicate it. We'll double click, that'll put us into the text mode. Triple click, that'll select the whole part. And I'm going to type in some new text, saying but I don't want, I have an idea here of something I want to do, so I don't want that fancy S. So I'm going to turn that off, go with just a regular S, but maybe something a little nicer on Antonio. And yeah, I'd like that. We'll select that and see if we can nestle that right up in here. What do you think? I'm trying to illustrate that this is editable text, that we can do anything that our creative juices suggest. So I'm going to create an ellipse, put that in the center of the page, and let's select our line 1 and tell it text, fit text to path. What path? That path right there. We'll take San Antonio, fit text to path. What path? Maybe right about here. I'm waiting for the red line to come up to tell me that's centered, but I want it flipped to the other side and reversed. Then we could turn off our ellipse, not delete it, but just leave it there if we want to modify it. And there we have another capability that we can exhibit with open type fonts. If you'll work with this, I believe you'll enjoy it as much as I do. Project complete.